an email, and you'll be able to watch all three parts in their entirety later at your leisure. As Betsy mentioned, we're very soon going to be launching an area where you will be able to go in and actually do some of the things that we've been showing you throughout this workshop. So these recordings, as well as some other tutorials, will be a great way for you to be able to go back, see what we did, and really try it yourself. And we'll make some of these open data sets available for you to try with the Winnipeg data and some of the other data sets that we've been working with. We're going to make it all available to you so that you can play around and try and learn how to do some of these things that we've been showing you. Like we've done in the last couple of the last two webinars, please do use the Q&A panel to reach us and make sure that you ask your questions to all of the panelists so that we see it. You may want to address a question to the person who's speaking right now, but remember, they are speaking, they are doing a demonstration right now, and they can't see the Q&A panel until their turn is up. So if you send it to all panelists, we'll make sure that question gets seen. Also, Mingzi and Joy from our marketing team are monitoring both the Q&A panel as well as the chat window. Mingzi will be sharing links with everybody during the presentation today through the chat window, and so that you'll be able to click on and see the surveys, take the surveys as we go through. We'll share some other resources with you as well. Okay, workshop outline. Here we are. We've gone through workshop 1 and workshop 2. We've gone all through introducing ArcGIS Online, which, as we mentioned, you will very soon have your own account and be able to use some of this and for learning purposes. How do you find data? How do you update load your own data? How do you work with other data sets and search that living atlas? That'll all be part of what you'll have in your GIS sandbox. Last week on January 27th, we covered really GIS analysis using the analytical tools for patterns, proximity, all those really cool things that you can do. And we looked at talked about using simple data science and some notebook technologies and how we can bring those tools into other things as well. So those tools and how they're available to you in other places. Today, we're going to be looking at some of the sort of ancillary applications that you also have as part of your GIS that you can work with. We're going to be looking at the way we can connect our Microsoft Office technologies to our GIS. We're going to be looking at how we can create dashboards, and we're looking at how we can create these things called story maps that are available to you. So today's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be very demo heavy today. We're just going to be working with the technology and showing you all of these tools that you have available to you. Now, at the end of last week, we did pose one audience participation question that we didn't have time to review the answers to. So I'm going to open up the questions today and look from webinar 2. We had question number 5. We asked everyone what their biggest challenge that they faced during COVID-19. And I think this is telling. I think pretty much everybody sort of went all of the above in terms of the challenges that were faced. I know COVID-19 has been a super challenging times for all of us, not only what we've seen trying to support health organizations such as yourself, but even our own work that we've done with COVID-19 as an organization. We've all kind of struggled with that. So it was really kind of interesting that we need data, we need technologies, we need resources, we need the how-to, and I think it's that know-how and that how-to that's really the rationale behind what we want to do by providing you with that sandbox. So look for those emails probably early next week. There'll be an email from Chima, and then there'll be a follow-up email with a link that you'll be able to go in and create your account and start working with the GIS right away. So we're pretty excited about that, and hopefully you'll be able to try some of this technology as well. For those who maybe missed the last 2 weeks or missed one of them, as I did last week, I'm going to do a really quick recap. Recall that in session 1, we talked about how GIS is really a system of systems. There's many capabilities within the GIS, but they're all really about measuring and recording data, analyzing data to gain insight, and engaging and communicating data. And really, it's that communication side that we'll be focusing on today with the dashboards, with the story maps, and with the Power BI and Excel that Paul is going to show us today. We also talked about the framework of geography, how we move from measuring, how we move from observing to understanding to responding. So how we go from simply collecting data to actually analyzing it, gaining an understanding, and then taking action on that data. And we've kind of been following that in our workshop outlined today. We talked about the importance of geography, how geography and location can act as that universal sort of primary key, that universal way of relating data sets, phenomena on the Earth's surface that you might not see as related before, but that you can bring those together by putting it all on a map and gaining understanding on those patterns. We looked at the capabilities of the platform and we showed you, and really we were introducing you to that ArcGIS online component of the platform, and that's really what we've been working with throughout this application. Today, for interest's sake, that apps part that you see as part of ArcGIS Online, that's really what we'll be focused on today. We've been using ArcGIS Online, its native interface. Today, we're going to look at some of the external apps and how they connect into ArcGIS Online. And as a lead into part two, we talked about the first law of geography and how Dr. Waldo Tobler and his first law says that everything is related to everything else, but near things are more related than distant things. And that was sort of the fundamental jumping off point to what we covered last week in our recap, and I'll recap that we looked at the standard analysis workflow, going from preparing your data, defining your purpose, asking your questions, preparing your data, getting that data in the map, ready to analyzing it, running the tools, and reviewing and understanding the results. And then the lather, rinse, repeat if you needed to rerun those things. We looked at how we can manage those tools, how we can make certain tools available to certain users, how we can budget access and make sure that people have appropriate tools and have access to what they need. We covered a little bit of that. But we spent the bulk of our time last week talking about the toolboxes themselves and the huge number of analysis tools that you have available to you through the ArcGIS online ecosystem. And we showed you some select examples of those, of how you can go and actually run some of those tools and look at and what the results actually mean. Okay, so audience participation time. Our seventh and final survey that we want to ask you today, and we're gonna do this right up front so that we can review the answers a little bit later. Please pull out your phone, grab that QR code, or type in that little short URL, arcg.is/xszww. We want to know a little bit about your how you see your needs around sharing and collaboration. What is it that you need to share with audiences? Who are those audiences that you need to share with? And we'll review some of those and look at those in just a moment. So I'll leave the slide up for just another second. Do take a moment to sort of fill that out as we go through. And Mingzi has shared the link for you in the chat window of the talk. So the first two applications that I want to talk about today, and then we want to show you, really center around the ability to connect your Microsoft Office with your ArcGIS environment. And this is really done in two ways. There is a download add-in that you can get from the Esri site, and we'll share the link with that a little bit later. And you install that directly over top of your Microsoft Office environment. And that allows you to log in and connect directly to ArcGIS and never leave Excel. So think of it this way. In the first workshop, we showed you how to take some Excel data and put that Excel data into your GIS. What this plugin allows you to do is to take some of that GIS and put it right inside of Microsoft Excel. And Paul's going to show us that in just a moment. It allows you to sit inside of Microsoft Excel, allows you to make a map, allows you to do some of the analysis tools, not the complete set that we showed you last week, but a few of the select tools that are available. It exposes some of that demographic data available to you. So Right inside of Excel, you can get a nice demographic report for the surrounding area around a facility that you might be looking at. It allows you to look at the organization data, data that other users in your GIS might have shared with you. It also allows you to take what you do in Excel, and if you do make a nice map in Excel, you can actually publish that data and that map up to ArcGIS so that other users can share that. And if you do update your data inside of Microsoft Excel, there's a process to go through that allows you to refresh the data after it has been published. So it's a very powerful connection that's available to you right inside of Microsoft Office. There's also, we won't show it today, but there's also a PowerPoint component to the Office plugin that allows you to turn your PowerPoint while you're doing a PowerPoint presentation to actually have you let you embed a live interactive map. So while you're doing your PowerPoint slideshow, you can pan and zoom around a map and do an identify, and it's kind of a gee whiz factor. The other part of this Microsoft connection is the ArcGIS for Power BI. And this doesn't require any plugins. If you have Power BI, right out of the box, Power BI includes an ArcGIS visualization. That ArcGIS visualization allows you to do simple things like put dots on a map, but it also, if you have an ArcGIS account, it allows you to connect into your organization and view and interact with some of your organizational data right inside a Power BI visualization. So that's another way that you can interact with that. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to and turn things over to my colleague Paul Vagley. Paul is going to show you some of the things that you can do inside of the Excel plugin and give you a quick tour of the Power BI connector. So with that, Paul, I will turn things over to you. I believe that Joy can give you the presenter ball and you can share your screen and off you go.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And my name is Paul Vagley. I'm the product specialist at Esri Canada for our location analytics stack of solutions. And what I wanted to go through were the two solutions Chris had just talked about, our integration into the Microsoft Office Excel, and we'll talk a little bit about the Power BI application as well. This Excel extension is one of my favorite. It's a hidden gem, I think, within our solution stack because it has a lot of functionality for both the GIS user as well as the non-GIS user, data scientists, people who just like to work with spreadsheets and tabular data, much like myself. This is usually the starting point, whether I'm going to be using data to geocode and send that up later to ArcGIS Online, because data is not perfect. And if I do have to make some changes or corrections to links or information, I can do that directly within Excel and have that reference into the map. So this data set that we're going to look at is COVID cases starting, ending the December, the last data set I got was on Monday, the 31st of this past week, and I started collecting this around November 17th. And just for the simplicity of geocoding and visualizing this, I'm just going to take all the data prior to 2020 and keep the 2021 data here. So I have all the neighborhoods in Toronto, and I have different metrics that have been reported as the City of Toronto releases the data, and I want to bring in that map. So with that little install at the top here in this ribbon is my ArcGIS Maps for Office plugin. I've already logged in, and I would just simply add a map, which I already have, and I have a map that is right inside Excel. So the first thing I'd like to do is visualize the data I have. And we can bring in point data, geocoding that, and you've already seen that process in earlier sessions, but I wanted to do something really simple that might seem tricky, and that's taking data that is linked to a polygon, not from Stats Canada. So we're not talking about linking to the CMA of an area or the first 3 digits of a postal code, but what if these neighborhoods are unique? So I have my data here. I'm going to just match up to the location type. Now I already have matched my Toronto neighborhood data to my my Excel spreadsheet, but simply just going in, adding a location once, and then it'll always be there, and then finding that data set you'd like to bring in and link to, and just what is that unique identifier? Could it be you're linking things by the name, or are you linking it by the ID? However you have that data, that link can be made. So we're just going to go back. I have this, and my field that I'm linking to is the neighborhood ID. And how do we want to visualize this? We don't want any visualization, so all the polygons being brought in are the same. Or maybe we'd like to look by something specifically. So sporadic recent cases. These are cases that have happened over the last 21 days since reporting, and they're removing the hospitals and long-term care facilities. So what's happening in the community? Now, because I'm collecting multiple vintages of the data, days and so on, do I want to aggregate all that information into one single layer of information, or keep the integrity of everything independently? We're going to keep that independent integrity of each layer for each date. I'm going to add that information, and it's gone in and matched the spatial neighborhoods that I've already set up in my ArcGIS to the polygons I have here. And this is where I can start doing many different things, like going in and playing around with the layers. Maybe I want to change the symbology of that information for visualization, or change how I'm referencing that data. I can also go in and bring in some data for further analysis. So one of my favorite things is sometimes I just want the data. So if I go to my enrich here, we can go into our world of demographic information. I'm just going to switch this over to Canada. And we have over 4,000 variables of information. I'm just going to grab two quick ones. What's the population for 2020? And what's the population for 2025? But there's a whole host of variables, from prescription medication spend to medication spends, how much time people are spending in long-term care facilities, a whole number of variables in which we can give you that information. I'm going to say next. Now, because we already have the polygons, we don't have to define a trading area. And just as I hit this little add to workbook, keep an eye on the L and the M at the top here. So I'm going to add that data, and we're taking that data, that demographic information from Environics, and we're bringing it right into our spreadsheet. So we're pulling the data. We're not having to go into the GIS to extract that information. It's directly within the analysis here. Now we're enriching quite a few layers of information, and I should have scaled this down a little bit, but it is working pretty quickly. Now, the other parts that we can do is the interaction between the table, the spreadsheet, and the map that we have right here. So I'm going to go in and specifically, once this runs, a specific date. I just want the last date of information. So I'm going to click open my little drop down here. The enrichment has been completed. We'll click the drop down, and I'm just going to pick the 31st, which was the last date. I've brought that data set down, and when I click on any particular record, I can start looking at that attribute information. But I want to know maybe which areas have had the highest number of cases. So let's filter and look at anything that is greater than 2,000 cases. You can see that we've brought this down to only 7 records, and it's filtered out our map for us. But I don't necessarily know which area, if I'm not familiar with the name, Mount Olive, Silverstone, Jamestown, is represented in the area with the largest number of cases. So I'm just going to right click, select on the map. I've select that asset or that area, and now I can click on that and start doing some reports. So one of the things I can do is run an infographic report. That allows me to look at the information, how many people live in the area or per household. So in this area, the average is 3.41 people per household, but we can compare this to benchmarks like Vaughan, Ontario, Canada, Toronto. So the area here has about 3.41 average household size, where the rest of Toronto sits at around 2.46. We can also look at age cohorts, so an age pyramid, and benchmark that to other areas within the community. But the other part I really like about using the tool directly within Excel is I can click on the reports. And we have some canned reports that you can start looking at. So for example, we can say family report, have this as a PDF or Excel. Now it is a polygon, so we don't have to worry about the radius, but we're simply going to create this report. I'm going to save that. And now we can look at a demographic report on the population, the census, number of children within that area. And there's a whole host of reports that you can leverage for this particular type of analysis. So now that we're done this, what can we do with the analysis that we have? Well, one of the things I do is I share this, as Chris had mentioned, up to my GIS that I can use in things that Samaya is going to talk about, like dashboards and story maps or other types of analysis that have been shown in other sessions. I can share this with everybody, but as data updates, like you see with the dates that I have, so today there'll be another update. If I go back in and I want to share that map, I'm just rewriting the existing layer that I have in my GIS, and that data will flow through all the other applications that's been referenced. So very easy to use that data in other apps. The last couple of things is I can create a slide of this for embedding into my PowerPoint, or I can copy this particular mapping map and share this directly within a Word document or any other type of slide that I'm using. So here is that map now in Power BI. Sorry, in the PowerPoint. So it's a really robust tool. One of my favorite is the ArcGIS Maps for Office Excel application, and there's a whole host of things we can spend a day. And in fact, on March 25th, Samaya and I will be talking about this further. Now, a lot of people also use the business intelligence tool, Power BI. And on the side here, I just have some slides and metrics that I've created. And this is a data set that has come from Environics Analytics called the Frailty Index. And this is looking at various types of risk health factors like asthma, cancer, COPD, diabetes, heart disease, and so on. And that frailty index is 100, meaning people in a particular area are no more or less likely to suffer from being frail and mobility issues within that community. We're just comparing some charts in here, but it's really this area here in the mapping application. So I have my map and I'm going to bring in some data. Now we can do this by location if you have addresses, if you're linking to a polygon, which we're going to do. I'm just dragging that data over and I've created a code. Now it's not the best code right now because I'm not linking it to anything exactly here, but we've opened up our map and now I'm going to go to my table of contents and I'm going to create that location type. Now in this case, I have some boundaries. These aren't points, they're polygons linking to specific area. And these are those dissemination areas, which are the smallest level of geography in which Stats Canada releases data. So I'm just going to change this over, and all the standard geographies are there for you, so you don't have to load them in. We'll say dissemination area, exact match. We'll say OK. And it's going to do the match for me. So we're looking at the city of Guelph, Ontario, and maybe we want to look at that frailty index. So on the side here, grab, and I'm going to color code this. So now we can look at these frailty scores as we click around on the polygons within the map, you can see my charts on the side are dynamically interactive with the map. But the real benefit of being able to leverage the Power BI plugin and using the Esri map technology is if I go onto my little wrench here, I can add demographic information here. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some demographics as a infographic. We'll say Canada. There we go. We're in the Canadian side. And now I can plug in some infographic data. And as I zoom around, this infographic information becomes dynamic, telling us population counts, income. Again, over 4,000 variables of information that you can leverage within your mapping application here in Power BI. The last part is that ability to link out to the ArcGIS ecosystem and bringing in data. So we can go through and we can grab things like, oh, the Living Atlas. Maybe I want to look at demographic information. So what is the average family size? Simply bringing that in creates that layer right within our mapping application. I'm just going to turn off the top layer, and you can see that we have that layer of average family size at that DA level within Canada. But finally, the last part we can do is also access information directly within our GIS. So I'm going to my ArcGIS. I'm going to look in my content, and if I have some information that I've published up, I can bring that in. But one benefit I like is I can go to the public ArcGIS content and look for information. So is there anything out there on hospitals? Let's see. There was yesterday. But we can look for any type of information that we want to incorporate into our analysis. And whatever we want to bring in that has been shared by the public, we can incorporate that simply by just adding that into our map. We don't have to worry about curating that information or worrying about publishing it. That information, as it's updated from that source, will constantly be updated. And this is how you can bring in multiple layers of information from your Power BI right into the mapping and bring in that data from your GIS for a more cohesive analysis. On that note, I'll pass that back to Chris.
Great. Thank you very much, Paul. That was fantastic. So while you were doing that, Paul, I was sending some chats out. I did want to point out and remind everybody that the enrichment that Paul just showed us and the inside of Excel and that access to the living atlas that he showed us inside of Power BI, that's the same enrichment and the same living atlas that Samaya showed us in the GIS environment back in the first part of our webinar. So that's a great way of kind of closing the loop for you, is that this is a system of systems, and we're not suggesting that you need to be locked into that browser paradigm. There are other ways that sort of named user that you have with the ArcGIS system unlocks a lot of access to all of these different things. So I seem to have the ball back, so I'm going to reshare my screen. And what I'd like to do first is, we've given you some time during Paul's session to sort of look at those questions. So let me pop up the answers that we brought in. Let's go back to our dashboard here. And I'm going to maximize this, and I'm going to go back to our last question here, webinar 3. And we asked you guys what information do you need to share with your stakeholders, and it looks like the number one is key performance indicators. And so how are you doing? How are you working? Are you achieving your goals and whatnot? And I'm seeing this for the first time myself, folks. So this is really interesting stuff. Thank you very much. Interesting outbreak updates. And with whom do you want to share it with? That's interesting. The majority of you right now are sharing with internal stakeholders, other government agencies, and in third place is the public, as well as a few other capabilities. So this is kind of interesting. And what I'll say to this is that these dashboarding technologies and these sharing technologies that we're going to show you can be used to share both internally and externally. So that's it's kind of interesting. I'm sort of, if Samaya were in the same room with me here, I'd be looking at her saying, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." So thank you very much for that. Let's move on now, and let's talk a little bit about 2 more different ancillary applications that we could show you. So we've looked at the ancillary applications for Office and for Power BI. There's 2 more I'd like to share with you now: dashboards and story maps. And Samaya is going to show you those in just a moment. What's the dashboard? Well, as the name suggests, it is a dashboarding tool. It is a tool not unlike what you just saw in the Power BI, but our dashboard is more of a presentation tool. Yes, you can use Power BI for that. You can also do a little bit of analytics inside of Power BI, as you just saw. Our dashboarding tool is to create an interactive presentation application that allows you to have visualizations like charts and graphs and tables and gauges that dynamically interact with the geography, with the map. So as you move around the map, as you zoom in on the map, as you click on a feature inside of a map, it updates some of the those indicators as well, and back and forth as you pick a sort of a collection of data in a range on a chart. Where is that represented on the map? So there's this notion of interactivity, and ArcGIS dashboard is very, very simple to build. You start with your map and you just share it as a dashboard, and you start adding widgets to it. The second thing that Samaya is going to show you is something that we call ArcGIS story maps. Story maps are a tool for you that allow you to, as the name suggests, leverage maps and leverage media to tell a story. And there's different ways and different flows that you can go through to tell that story. A great example, and I've kind of highlighted here, is the city of Hamilton. Again, we'll share the link to that. They've used story maps to share their child and youth health atlas for the city of Hamilton. So it's a series of maps, and it goes through, and you scroll down as you move across the top from different topics across the top, and then when you're in a topic, you scroll down through that numbered list of different, text and pictures and so on. And you can also create just sort of a little linear, story that you want to tell with your data. But it's a very powerful way of sharing the results of your GIS analysis with an audience that might not be comfortable with a complex tool like a dashboard or Power BI or an application. Just something that really all they need to navigate through it is the scroll wheel of their mouse or brush with their finger on their iPad. That's what story maps are all about. So these things are much easier to see in action. So I'm going to turn things over to Samaya, and she's going to show us dashboards and story maps, how to build them, how to use them. Samaya, over to you.
Awesome. I'm just going to wait for the ball to be passed to me.
There we go.
And thank you very much. Okay, so let's start off with ArcGIS dashboards. So dashboards are really an amazing tool, which really allows you to organize and visualize your data for an engaging experience. So, why would you use ArcGIS dashboards? Well, one, they are very easy to understand. You're not looking through tables. Everything is being visualized in charts. Or gauges in front of you. It is ready to use, so I'll be going through the very simple dashboard builder and showing you how you can configure those. They're also very interactive, and the interactivity of it creates an engaging experience for your audience that makes them understand and gain exactly what they want to see through your data. Dashboards are also very flexible, so you are able to bring in external content and embed that within your dashboard, and you can also take a dashboard itself and embed it anywhere else. And finally, it is configurable and very adaptable to specific audiences and events and situations. So dashboards are for everyone, different audiences, and for different uses. So firstly, they can be strategic and, helping executives or yourself keep track of those KPIs. They can also be tactical, and this can help you keep track of any trends and gain deeper understanding of those. It can also be operational, so as you have any projects or events, you can monitor the near real-time status of whatever you're working on. And finally, they can also just be informational, whether it be internal to show internally what's going on, or external to engage your audience through community outreach. So let me show you a very, very simple dashboard that I built for part 3 that we're also going to be going through and building, and what information we can gain out of this. So if you remember from part 2, we took all of our recreational facilities that had fitness centers, and we created a 20-minute walk time around those because we wanted to find out how accessible they really were. So each of our white dots here represent a recreational facility with that fitness center, and then you see these outlines for those buffer zones, those 20-minute walk buffer zones. So if we take a look at our right side here, we get some totals information. So the total population that has access within 20-minute walk time of any facility. And then how many people that are of Aboriginal identity have access, and the percentage of the total Aboriginal population in all of Winnipeg that has access to these facilities. On our left side, you'll see a list of each facility, its address, how much of that population it specifically covers. And this may overlap with any other recreational facilities. Then we have the covered area that 20-minute walk time has, and also the median age of the people in that area. And then down here, we've got a simple pie chart of just whether or not there is availability of an indoor pool in our recreational facility. So if we hover over, we can see that 9 out of 10 of those facilities do not have an indoor pool. So another component of this dashboard is over here, we have a drop-down where we can actually select a facility. So once we select that facility, you'll see that it's the only one that pops up. We still have all of the other covered areas, but you can see the darker pink is the one specific to this community center. And you'll see that our list was filtered out, and also our pie chart indicating whether or not that facility has an indoor pool. So we can move around, we can zoom into our map, and we can get an idea of where these boundaries are. And if we wanted, through a base map switcher on the map itself, we can maybe change our base map to imagery and see where those boundaries actually go to and which houses are covered. So let's go through how we can build this very simple dashboard. But first and foremost, the most important thing that you must do before you build a dashboard is know your data. So here is the map that we are going to be going off from creating our dashboard. And I want to show you what we have in the map first. So we have our 20-minute walk times to each facility. So that is going to be those individual boundaries and buffer zones. If we take a look at the table, we can see it's got the name of each individual facility, and we also have some of those enriched fields. Another data set we have in here that I created is just a total of all those 20-minute walk times. So last time we ran that drive time tool, and this time I used the option to just dissolve everything. And so it made one feature and not multiple features. So I went ahead and I enriched that to get the total population number and the total median age. So now we have these two data sets to work off of and build our dashboard from. And also finally, we have our just our recreational centers. So that's just that point data showing those recreational facilities and whether or not they have, you know, any other information. And we also have some address information. So let's go from this map and let's build ourselves a dashboard. So through my own map settings, I can go through more details, and that will open up my maps item page. Now, there's two ways of creating a dashboard. I can either go to my app launcher, which is right by my username, and select the dashboard option from there. But if I want to create a dashboard from my map, I can go through the option of creating a web map and creating a dashboard from there. So I will give this a title, add any tags I need, and save it in my Chima Part 3 folder that I created. So once I do that, I am going to be taken to the dashboard editing mode. So this is where we are going to build our dashboard. Just to get familiar with the interface, you'll see that that map I selected and made the dashboard from is going to be the only thing in it right now. At the top here, I have my title, and I have this drop down from where I can select different types of elements, which can show my data in different ways. I also have the option to save my dashboard or save as if I wanted to create a copy. And then I have some of my dashboard options. So through here, I am going to change my theme from light to dark. And there's a whole bunch of options that I can configure for the visualization of my dashboard itself. But I am going to change my dashboard background color into this dark gray. And so you'll see that dark gray appears here. And now my theme is a darker theme. So let's start configuring our first element. So let's take a look at this population indicator. So from my drop-down, I'm going to select an indicator, and you'll notice those three layers that were also in our map are going to appear. Since I want the total population, I am going to select that dissolve 20-minute walk time total. So here you're just going to get a simple count by default of how many features there are available in that data set. But what I want to do is I want the sum of the 2020 total population. And just like that, I'm going to get that number. Now, once I move into the indicator tab, this is where I can add some more text to give my indicator some context. So I'll say it's the population. If I want, I can add an icon. So let's say a little person, and they'll appear there, and I can change the color from here too. So in my general tab, this is the name is pretty important. So you'll notice later that we're going to be kind of configuring the dynamic aspect of the dashboard, which is the indicators, the elements talking to each other. So it's really important that you give your elements a name, and that's just best practice. So if I wanted, I can change some colors around, and unless your information is being updated consistently, I would recommend, if it's not, to just turn off this last update text and save some space. So once that's done, you'll notice at the top left corner of each element, there is a drop down, and you have the option of dragging the item around and positioning it. You can go back into the settings that we were in and configure. You can duplicate it or delete it. So let's drag our population indicator, and you'll see that some options will appear. I can dock it as a row, or I can dock it as a column. So let's move it over onto this side, and then I can adjust the size. Okay, so that was pretty simple. Next, let's move on to our indicator for the population of Aboriginal identity. And let's use this duplicate option to configure that. So you'll see I've got the same indicator here, and I'll go back into the settings of this one I just duplicated. And I am going to change that, the field that I'm looking at, so the column, to 2020 Aboriginal identity. And that's going to give me that 19,711. So if I go back into my settings where I can add some text, I'll say that's Aboriginal identity. And here you can say we have a percentage of the total Aboriginal population that the walk times are covering. In order to get that, I need to configure a reference type. So let's say I wanted to know how much of the Aboriginal population was covered in the total population of the 20-minute walk time. So we can do that through our 2020 total population field. And here you'll see we get that 120,000 number that we have for our other indicator. If we go back to our indicator tab, we can remove this reference and use this field option to calculate a percentage. So here you'll see it's going to be that value divided by whatever reference you indicate. So in this case, it's going to be that 120,000, that total population. And you'll see I'll get that percentage. I can add some text. And if I want to display more or less decimals, I can do so by just adding a percentage pattern. So let's say I wanted 2 decimals, I can add this. If I wanted 4, I can add that, but we'll keep it to 1. Okay, so that is 16.3%. So that's the population from the total population covered from the 20-minute walk time. But let's say now I want to get that percentage of how many Aboriginal people are covered, have access in all of Winnipeg. Then I can change my reference type to a fixed value. And I know the total population of Aboriginal people in Winnipeg is around 84,000. And so I can set that up here, and you'll notice that that comes here. I'll just quickly add some more text to give that more context. And now in my general tab, I will add that name again. I can also change my background color. So let's say this, or if I have a specific hex code, I can take that and use that. And I'll change my text color to give it a little bit more contrast. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this item under here. If we go back to our dashboard, you'll see that there really is no gap between these two indicators, and that's because we've grouped them together. So in order to group any of your elements together, while you're dragging your element, you want to hold the Shift key down on your keyboard, and it will group that, and you'll notice that that gap is now gone. So now I'm going to quickly just add some rich text, which is going to be that cover totals within a 20-minute walk time. So a rich text element is just simply an HTML block. I have the option of adding tables, images, links, and it's very helpful if you just want to add some information. So I'll make the text a little bit bigger. I can center it. And I'll change my text color. Once that's done, I'll group it up here. And make that smaller and adjust that sizing. Okay, so just like that, we got 3 different elements down, and now we can quickly move on to our next one. So let's now configure a list. And this list is going to have each of those community centers or facilities. So now I'm going to be using my 20-minute walk time to each facility layer. So we're going to get individual listings for the 10 facilities. If I go into configuring the list itself, here is where I can add information about each list item. So here is an option where you can get the value of each field. So I'm going to first add in the complex name, and that individual unique one will show up. I can turn off my line item icons. I can also add, let's say, the address, and I can also add some text. So the covered population for each one. That will be the total population. And then I can add in the covered area and the median age. So from here is where I can individually play around and make it look however I want it to. So I can change the color. I can change the size to be a little bit larger. And I can bold, underline, however I want. We'll give it a name, remove that last updated text, and there we have it. So we'll leave this to the left, and we will add a pie chart. So again, this pie chart is going to be taking information from each individual facility. So my category field, I want to know which ones have an indoor pool, and I'm going to leave it as a count. So now there are a lot of chart settings that you can go around and play with. I'm going to increase the text size so it's a little bit easier to see. I want to hide this percentage, and I can do so. Now in the slices, you'll see the different types of categories. I can change some colors. And I can also change how I want the outline to look. We'll give it a name and remove that. And once that's done, we'll just put this right underneath our list. So an important part that we're going to configure next is going to be this drop down right over here. That's going to filter out our map, this list, and also this pie chart. So let's go ahead and do that. So any type of selectors, so for example, that was a category selector, can only be configured through a header or a side panel. So we're going to go ahead and create a header. It'll default to our dashboard title, so we can change that. And once we create that header, if we go to the top left of it, you'll notice that we'll get some more selectors. So we're going to go ahead and add that category selector. And we want to pick our features from the 20-minute walk times to each facility. So the line item is going to be that the complex's name. So here you'll get a preview of what your selector is going to be looking like. So that looks good. We have the option of including a none option. And we're just going to label that an instruction for the audience to select a facility. Now, our actions section is the most important part, and this is where we're going to be talking with the other elements. And it's pretty simple to configure. So when a selection changes, when a facility is selected, I want to be able to filter my map. I want to filter the 20-minute walk time, so that boundary to each facility. And I also want to filter out the recreational point. So here you'll notice that we have to kind of map our source field to our target field. And so that is going to be the complex name in our drop down here, and we are going to map that to the complex name inside the points themselves. We'll also go ahead and filter out the list that we created and filter out our indoor pie chart. So once we've done that, now you'll notice once we make a selection, our pie chart and our list gets filtered out, and so does our map itself. Just one last quick thing to show is adding this base map switcher to be able to give a little bit more freedom to the audience. We can do that through the map configuration settings themselves here. So I have this option for the base map switcher. There's a whole bunch of other options that you can take a look and turn on or off for your own needs. And just like that, we have the option of adding any of these base maps behind our data. So that's a look at configuring dashboards. I want to go through some examples of some other dashboards that we have created. So just quickly, this is the Outbreaker, the COVID-19 Canadian Outbreak Tracker dashboard, where you can select a province and the map gets filtered for it, and all of these other indicators and charts also get filtered to show some trends and give some more information about case status. So this is the mental health for COVID-19 recovery dashboard that Paul actually created, and it gives some information about what anxiety disorders or mood disorders and their prevalence is occurring in different areas of Canada at the DA level, or at the FSA level, sorry. And that's the forward sortation area, and that's the first 3 letters of your postal code. So it's, as you see, if once we move around, the indicators and the charts filter out by the map extent itself. So this one is really cool about just community wellness and how people feel. As we know, with COVID-19, there's isolation, and that is really impacting people's well-being. So here is also a COVID-19 household dynamics dashboard. Again, we're looking at Winnipeg, and this is just showing the number of people in households. So just the prevalence of how many people, of how many households there are with certain number of people, and the transparency indicates the predominance. So we have some bookmarks where we can go to Toronto and see where those at-risk areas may be for households with 5 or more people. So here you'll be able to see that there is more of a predominance of 5 or more people households in these FSAs. And then finally, we have this map showing an analysis of the high number of visible minorities compared to a high number of households with 5 or more people living in a household. And the larger the diamond indicates the more number of apartment buildings there are in that area. So this kind of does an analysis of potential vulnerable areas. And again, as we move around the map, our charts of visible minorities and household structure types filter out. Another quickly, we have our vaccine distribution scenario planner. So we can select a facility, and we're able to find within a 30-minute drive times which dissemination areas have access to that hospital for vaccine distribution and which dissemination areas don't. And we've broken it up into different phases and which facilities would cover those number of people. So that is a quick look at dashboards, and I want to now move on to story maps, because that is also a very fun and interesting way to really display your data, engage your audience, and tell your story. So story maps are very, very easy to configure. There's even an option of creating a simple map within the story map builder. There are many options that you can configure to add different types of media, any maps that you create, and really engage your audience. There's also simple out-of-the-box designs that don't take much time at all to configure. So in order to access story maps, you can do so from your organization page and through the app launcher. So here you'll see we have our story maps option, and very quickly, all we need to do is create a new story. And there are some quick start options, but we're going to do it from scratch. So let's say for this story map, we want to build our workflow that we did in part 1 and 2. So people internally can get an idea of how GIS helped us see the value of integrating our data and adding some spatial information. So first you want to add a title. We'll also add a subtitle. And we can add a cover image or a video. So I've got the Chima logo ready to go. Here you can see we have some text that's being cut off. We can go within the options and just move the focal point a little bit lower, so we can see some more of that text. So, you can play around and get some more and make it look however you want it to. So let's start building our story. Throughout building a story map, there's going to be this little plus button that's going to follow you around, and that's going to be your content block. So you're going to have a few options that you can start from. So let's add some text. And we'll get a little customization bar, and I want it to be a heading. So first we're going to ask, well, what data are we using? From here, if I just have my cursor over, I can start typing. So we want some Winnipeg recreation centers. And that is going to be a subheading. And then we can continue to add some more text about how we brought in that information from a spreadsheet. So in order to show that, I am going to add an image. And it's going to be my Winnipeg Recreational Center spreadsheet. So here I've kind of outlined that location data that we used, and you can notice I can change the size depending on the pixels of my image itself. So here you'll see the large image is blocked out because my original image is not large enough. So I can continue and add some text to show that my spreadsheet is ready to be transformed. And now I can add a map of those Winnipeg rec centers to show what they look like after they were brought into ArcGIS Online. So this is just your map viewer within the story map builder. If there are any bookmarks, I can choose them there. And then if I want to add something like a legend, I have the option of doing that there too. So I can place the map. Again, I have the option of changing the size, and we can continue. So next we looked at some of those Canadian community hospitals. So this was the data set. And it was from the Canadian Institute for Health Information. So we're just going to take this link for our data source, and we can highlight some text and link to that data source from here. And so people have an idea of where the data is coming from. So next we also used or learned about the ArcGIS Living Atlas of the world. And, I could kind of just link it in here, but I want my audience to be a little bit more engaged. So I'm going to take this link, and using my content block, I am going to embed this website into my story map. So it'll appear as a context card, but we have an option to change it to an interactive embed. And that just means that my audience is going to be able to click on the website itself and navigate it within my story map. So next what we did is we did some data enrichment and visualization in part 1. And we did that through some enrichment in Environics analytics. So I'm going to go ahead and add a map of my enriched Winnipeg neighborhood clusters. And this time I am going to use the float option to move my map to the left and add some text to the side. I also have the option of adding some bullet points. And I can also add some instructions for my audience to select a neighborhood. It'll get larger and scroll to the bottom to see those enriched fields. So just to give a little bit more information about Environics, I will embed that website just like we did with the Living Atlas. But this time I am going to leave it as a context card. It's a lot more concise and it saves a little bit of space. So something else that we did is we symbolized our Winnipeg data. So I can add some more text about how we did that. And I've also created a video that I can actually add about that symbolization process. So I'll make that large. And now my viewers and my audience can see how we went into the symbolization properties, selected the diabetes prevalence rate, and we're able to visualize and see our options from there. So again, the point of story maps is to incorporate all these different types of engaging options that you have available to you. So next what we did is in our first, in part 1, is we created this web app showing the comparison between the diabetes prevalence rate and the Aboriginal prevalence rate in Winnipeg. Now, if we wanted, we could embed this web application itself, but Story Maps gives us an option to create that within Story Maps itself. So I really don't even need to create that web application if I'm going to be delivering a story map. So from here, I can add a web map, and I will just turn on the diabetes. I'll turn off the Aboriginal prevalence rate, just have the diabetes. And on the other side, I can select that same map. And this time I'll turn off the diabetes prevalence rate and just have the Aboriginal prevalence rate. And just like that, I've got a swipe tool within my story map. So finally, something I want to show you is a sidecar. So last week we looked at some analysis tool sets. And a sidecar is a type of compartmentalized section of your story where you can have a docked panel and some text and have an image or a video right beside it. So here we can talk about our manage data tool set, and we can add an image of what that tool set encompasses. And then we can add some media. So I have an image of how we dissolved our boundaries through that data set. So within the sidecar, you'll notice that there is a builder here. I can add a new slide. And next we can talk about our use proximity tool set. Again, I've got an image here of the tool set itself. And I also created a short video showing the recreational facilities with fitness centers, calculating those buffer times, and then having that enriched fields. So now you can see I can put all of my analysis tool sets into one sidecar and group all of those together there. Now, one last thing I want to show you is how you can create a very simple map within Story Maps itself. And we can do that through adding a map and adding something called an express map. Now, this is a very lightweight map builder within the Story Map Builder itself, and we can add some features. So, for example, we can add some of our recreational centers. So all I need to do is add an address, and it will tell me, it will add a point. I can add that to the map, and then I can add some more information. For example, the name of the complex itself. I can add a description, and in this case, that will be some information about the community center itself. I can change the style if I want, and I can also add an image. So I'm just going to do one for now. And it creates, you know, that point there. But here I've added a few more points, and you can see where some of those fitness centers are. If I want, I can select one and it'll take up the whole space. Throughout Express Maps, I also have the option of adding lines and different points and adding text within the map itself to give it some more context. So I want to show you some examples of other story maps. So here is a story map from GIS in health, and this is from our education department. And there are different purposes for story maps. So what we did was kind of could be an internal presentation of how GIS can help us. But there's also options of a story map being educational and to provide resources. So this kind of takes a look at how you can map COVID-19 in Canada, and tells you, breaks it into 3 parts, gives you some information, some resources on how you can build those different parts and share your story. This is a story map that Chris actually created, and it talks about the context of COVID-19 in Toronto neighborhoods. So it's possible that you want to just tell a story and share that with an external audience and make it more engaging. So here we're looking at just COVID cases. And here we're looking at COVID cases per 100,000 people, and you can see the difference, especially in the Scarborough area. So right over here. And then we have some more information about long-term care home cases and how it's important to look at other factors like median household income or the median age in Toronto by neighborhood. And Chris concludes this by saying that raw case numbers don't tell the whole story, and epidemiology is complicated, and provides some more data sources for the audience to explore. So this is another story map by Partners in Health about their mental health programs around the world. So they first talk a little bit about global mental health. They bring in a very engaging infographic. Then they bring another one in. They talk about the solution, their own health programs, and some country profiles. And this is another feature of story maps that's known as a guided map tour. So as we scroll down, they're showing different programs in different countries, and the map follows along. Or if we wanted, we can just skip to a different region, and the panel will skip to that same one. And then finally, as Chris had mentioned right before he turned it over to me, this is the Child and Youth Health Atlas, and it's a tool used by the City of Hamilton, local school boards, and the community partners to identify, track, and prioritize to take action on health issues in order to protect and improve the health and well-being of children and youth in Hamilton. So here you can see there's some school, the enrollment in schools, where those schools are, whether they're secondary, elementary, which district they belong to, what those targeted surfaces may be, and where those areas with highest needs are. And this is broken down by Hamilton wards. If we go to social detriments, you'll notice that if we click on each one, the map will change. So recent immigration, you see those percentages. We can look at education level, single parents, and low income, and that changes as we go. So this is actually using a classic story map template and not the builder that I just showed you, but this can definitely be transferred and built in the story map builder that we just went through. And I quickly want to go back to our story map and show you how you can use the design option to quickly change the look and feel of your story map in just one click. And from there, you can publish it to either yourself, your organization, or a specific group like our TMO workshop group, and publish the story from there. It's giving me a warning that, you know, these aren't shared with the group. And so from here, I can share the items and make sure they're accessible to whoever I shared the story map with. And with that, I will stop sharing and I will turn it over to Chris.
Samaya, thank you very much. That was great. That actually, I'm pretty jazzed about it. I'm also gotta say I'm pretty humbled that you actually showed my story map. I'd almost forgotten about that. We got like a handful of minutes left here. I haven't seen any questions come in on the Q&A or the chat. While the Paul and Smaya were presenting, I was throwing out some links. So do check the chat window. I've put some links where you can find some of these things. We have a resources hub where all of those dashboards Samaya showed us, you can actually find from the drop-down list. But we will again, so that one question did come in. It looks like Samaya is answering it. So about publishing dashboards, Samaya, are you going to answer that question, or do you want me to read it out? Or
We can read it out.
sure. So the question here is for publishing dashboards. If I want to add reference section to show what layers were used and where those data come from, is it possible to do that, and how easy is it? My thoughts, Maya, is you could have used that rich text box that you used just for the title. You can put any amount of text in there you want, and you can include links. So you could actually have a little bibliography-like page with links and embedded images to show kind of a reference right in the dashboard. And what we didn't have time to show you is you can actually have a slide over where you can hide that sort of page of text and bring it out as kind of a set of instructions. So that's the easiest way to do it. So listen, I know people want to get going. We're almost right at the bottom of the hour. So one last time, I want to thank everyone who participated in all three of these webinars. We really appreciate it. On behalf of Esri Canada, I do want to thank Chima for the opportunity to present to all of you over these last 3 weeks. And as we mentioned at the beginning, do keep an eye open for an email that'll be coming in the next few days, letting you know when that hub is ready and with instructions where you can go and create an account to try some of these things that we've shown you. So do keep an eye open for that. Also, I want to thank Samaya in particular for doing the lion's share of all the tough work over the last 3 weeks. Also, like to thank Joy and Mingzi for their help out in the wings off stage, answering the questions and handing us the ball back and forth. Thanks for Paul to joining us today. With that, we'll leave things alive for a few minutes, but we can stop the recording. We'll end the formal presentation. One last time, thank you very much, everyone. This was great. I hope it was valuable. Thank you very much.
Thank you.